Hello, everybody. Good morning. So great to see all of you. I'm Pastor Adonia, and Pastor Mike and I pastor together here, and it's really great to welcome you and see some new faces and all of our family faces. So, yes, we're continuing in our series on some assembly required. And so the point of this whole series is that in our relationships, although many of us are in relationships, we have relationships, right? We have friends, we have spouses or children or parents. Just because we have these components doesn't mean that our relationships always look the way that we think they should look, and that there's assembly required. We need instructions. We need to follow the instructions. We need tools, and we need a strategy to make it work. And last week, Pastor Mike talked about fixing what is broken, and he shared about fixing a couch that we have and how we sometimes have to take things apart and put it back together stronger so that it can last a long time and be a good piece of furniture or a good relationship. I got a lot of inspiration from that message last week, so I'm kind of going to be re-giving it, but it's from me, so it's different, right? So the series is some assembly required, but my sermon is some disassembly required, okay? Because when you're starting from scratch, if you're building a piece of furniture from scratch, actually my sister went shopping at IKEA yesterday, and she has a whole bunch of pieces of furniture, of a dresser in her room, and it's all in pieces, and she has to assemble it from scratch. But most of us aren't starting from scratch, right? Most of us already have a family. We're already in it. We're already in our relationships. So wherever you're at, it might be a good idea to think about how some disassembly might actually be helpful. We don't like to disassemble things, right? We feel like we're going backwards sometimes. But in order for things to last forever, to be good forever, sometimes we have to go backwards a little bit and reassemble. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So one of the things that really just popped into my mind as Mike was giving his message last week was this experience that we had in the marriage course. It started in the marriage course. To be honest, it's been happening ever since. We've been growing and having this experience ever since the marriage course. And it's really kind of mind-blowing to me because when did we first attend the marriage course? It was 2 years ago, maybe 3. We've been married and blessed for 12 years at least, up until that point. And if you ask me about my relationship before the marriage course, I'm like, we're great. We're awesome. We have such a good relationship. Our family, we got great kids. We love each other. We respect each other. And it was great. I believe we have a really good relationship. However, there's always a deeper level you can go to, right? And I realized something during the marriage course that I just never had recognized in the past 12 years of marriage. And I'm not sure which day it came out. If you've done the marriage course, you know that each week there's a topic and there's something to delve into and something to talk to each other about and ask questions about and forgive each other for. And I think it may have been on the day of when we had to forgive each other. And it's specific. Now you turn to your spouse and forgive them for whatever. And I think for me, it was only in that moment where I realized I actually have been holding on to some things that I never expressed to him, and I felt almost silly to say it, but I think I said something like, I forgive you for hurting my feelings so many times. And I think he was like, huh? What? Because I'm really, unlike Mike wears his heart on his sleeve. You always know what he's feeling or what he's thinking. And for me, I don't. So I think it really was a surprise to him. But I realized that over the course of so many years, there's times when Mike will say something, and it's probably to you it's not even offensive, but I'm kind of a sensitive person. And to me it felt, condescending, or like he thinks I'm stupid or something. That's not what he actually felt, to be clear. But that's how I felt when he said something. And I didn't like that feeling, and I didn't like it, so I would just ignore it, or I'd stuff it, or I'd sweep it under the rug, and then go on with our relationship like everything's great. And it works pretty well. But I did realize that after so many times, whenever he would say something, I wouldn't just react to that comment. The past 15 comments would all be right there, and I'd be like, ugh, why did he say that? But no, I don't want to feel that, so go away, feelings. Go away, comment. I don't remember you happened. But then the next time, then it was like there'd be 13 comments there, So I was really surprised when these words came out of my mouth at the marriage course. I think it was something along the lines, I forgive you for hurting my feelings. But it seemed so simple, but it was so important. Because as long as I was stuffing or ignoring or sweeping under the rug my negative emotions or negative feelings about what he said, it didn't mean they went away. And in a moment of frustration, they would all come back. And also at times if we wanted to be intimate. But if he had said something that day, I did not want it. So over time, even without me recognizing it, it would put a little bit more space in between us. And it really felt silly for me to say that to him, because when I said, actually when you say this, it sounds kind of condescending to me. And I think his reaction was like, well, I've been saying this kind of things for years and you never reacted. I'm like, I know. I just didn't tell you. And I think that from Mike's perspective, it would have been really easy to feel offended or hurt. Was our relationship fake for the last 12 years? Did you not really love me entirely? Or, it'd be easy to go on the defensive. I really applaud Mike for taking it so graciously. And also, he's hardly said anything like that in the last couple years. He's really taken it to heart and taken my feelings into consideration too. So the point of this whole story is that we had to disassemble a bit. We had to kind of take things apart in our relationship. And this is a process that I call, and that we know in our faith, as restoration. Okay. I want to share a little bit from the Divine Principle. This is a quote from one of the pages, 177 and then 178. When someone has lost his original position or state, he must make some condition to be restored to it. The making of such conditions of restitution is called indemnity. Suppose two people who once loved each other come to be on bad terms. They must make some condition of reconciliation before the love they previously enjoyed can be revived. And then there's this one. For anyone to be restored to the original position or state from which he fell, he must make an indemnity condition by reversing the course of his mistake. So in this, and there's also this. In order to climb up, we have to go the opposite way. We have to restore. So I think for a lot of us, we just like to think about going forward. We're making progress. We're doing great. And we don't like to think about going backwards or going back down or reversing and doing something opposite of what maybe we were doing before. But fortunately, because of the marriage retreat that we went to and the marriage course, and I think just some common sense, I think I had the tools to be able to share without being so accusatory, and Mike also had the common sense to be gracious and the tools to not overreact. And so since that point, I've been training myself to speak up. Whenever Mike says something that I perceive to be frustrating or annoying, I've really been working on recognizing it in the moment, because for one thing, I don't like to feel negative emotions, so I kind of like, go away. But I've been training myself to recognize it and then say something about it and say, hey, I thought that was kind of insensitive, and you probably didn't mean it that way, but this is how it made me feel. And of course, he doesn't always like to hear that. It doesn't, nobody likes to hear that you hurt somebody's feelings, right? So it makes a speed bump, or it makes like a disruption in our day. And I don't like to do that. But I realize that for our relationship and for our future and for the continuation of our relationship and the growth of our relationship, it's important for me to do that. And I can say that in the last few years, we've really come a long way in our openness and our communication and our honesty with each other. But in the moment, it kind of feels like I'm going backwards. Before it was like, look at us, we hardly ever fight. We're such a happy couple together. And from the outside perspective, or even from my perspective, that's what it looks like, because we're not fighting. And we hardly ever disagree, but for me to express my disagreements and to say out loud the things that I am feeling more and more often, maybe it looks like things are going backwards. But when it's out there and we can work it out, and we always do work it out, then we know how each other is doing. We can support each other. And our relationship feels even more real, more vulnerable, and more vibrant. But I want to go back to this. When we lose something, or if we get to a certain point, we realize that, this is not actually where I want to be. This isn't working out the way I thought it was going to work out. Then sometimes we have to make some condition. We have to take some action. We have to say some words or do something to restore that relationship. There must be a condition of reconciliation before we can enjoy the love that we want to really enjoy. And I'm talking about our relationship, and I'm talking about marriage, but this can apply in any kind of relationship. Whether it's with your coworkers, your friends, your children, your relationship with God. And we do it by reversing the course of our mistakes. So in our case, it's fairly simple. Instead of continuing to say things that make me frustrated, then Mike doesn't say those things, and he's working on saying words of affirmation. If you look at the love languages, there's different ways that people experience love. There's, physical touch and quality time and gifts, and mine is words of affirmation. So when I get words of affirmation, I blossom, and if I hear words that make me frustrated, it's like I shrivel up. So Mike has learned to do the opposite and give me words of affirmation. It's the reverse, okay? That's pretty simple. And in many cases, it's a little bit more complex, so it has to go deeper. But in our own relationships, if you think about, where you're at, who's in your life, where is something off, where it feels like it's not working the way I want it to work. Maybe it's with your spouse, maybe it's with your in-laws, maybe it's with your children. But I really encourage you to maybe take a couple steps back. I know I don't like to go backwards. I feel like especially in our faith as unificationists, we always onward and upward, right? Onward and upward. Let's do it for God. Let's make the world a world of peace. But when we feel like that we can't have anything wrong in our own life, we should be the example. So I shouldn't have problems. And if I have them, then let's just do what we need to be doing. So I want to get this into our heads. I feel, for me also, I don't want to feel like I'm going backwards on something. And I think that's human nature, but especially for us in our faith. So it's okay to look a little closer, and it's okay to take a step back. It's okay to maybe unwrap things a little bit and address some issues. This is another great quote that I found. This is from Reverend Moon, and I really liked it. I grew up in my family. My mom made bread most of our life. My dad was very particular and didn't like sliced bread from the store, so my mom made bread for years. And I got the chance to experience it myself, and then I found this quote by a true father about bread, and it's also about restoration and recreation, so I'm going to share that with you. Have you ever mixed flour and water to make dough? Bread dough must be kneaded and shaped before it can become manageable. Initially, there's flour all over the kitchen, but with work, the dough will become good bread. Recreation is almost like making dough because it comes in all kinds of shapes. One time it looks like hell, another time like heaven. One time it looks long, another time short. But by going through this process, it becomes manageable. And if you've ever actually made bread, it's really interesting because in the beginning, when you put the flour and the water together, it's so sticky. It's so sticky, and yeah, there's flour everywhere, and it's all over your hands. And if you don't know where where you're going to end up at, it's like this is a disaster. And it really takes time, and you have to like push it down and lift it up and flop it down and mold it and push it, and for a while it feels like I'm just going to have bread dough all over my hands. But there's like a point where it turns. And it's not sticky, messy dough anymore, but it's like becomes almost like a ball, like a bouncy ball. And it's smooth and it's soft and it doesn't stick to the counter, it doesn't stick to your hands anymore. And then you know it's ready to rise. Who's had that experience? Somebody tell me they're relating. Okay, good. Because it's one of these experiences where it's hard to express unless you've experienced, where it's like completely disaster, but you keep going and you keep going, you keep working at it, and then, wow, all of a sudden it changes and it works out. I feel like sometimes our life is like that. It feels so messy. And I'm trying, but some of me got stuck over there, or something's not working out. But when we keep working on it, we keep restoring, then it all comes together. So let's see here. I'm getting inspired and I'm jumping around in my message. Okay, so another point that I wanted to make, along with this kind of idea that addressing that we don't always like to go backward. We always make going forward. However, the other side of this is that if we continually just keep going forward without addressing important things that need to be addressed, it actually becomes detrimental. And there comes a certain point where we can't really move forward anymore. We get stuck. And honestly, I feel like sometimes in our own church and in our experiences of our faith, we've experienced that as well, where there's been difficulties, or there have been challenges, or there's been a scandal. And sometimes we tend to just kind of sweep things under the rug or forget that they happened, or no, we got to keep going forward. But I really feel that in some ways that's hurt our own spiritual lives, it's hurt our own communities. And it's not bad to go back and look at these things, address them, so that we can go further and go farther and do better. I had an example. This is the hard part, though, because to stop going forward and go backward, maybe it sounds like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. We need to, do things right. We need to unpack. We need to reassemble. But here's the tricky part that we don't always like to admit. In order to disassemble and reassemble, we have to let go of our ego. We have to let go of our pride and have to let go of being right. That's the part I really liked about this song, and it was one of the first lines before the volume went up. But it was something like, this house can't take another argument more, and our pride is the only one that's winning. we don't like to feel like we're going backwards because we feel like that's a reflection on who I am, or it's a reflection on how good I am. And we don't always like to go back in our relationship and go to my spouse and say, I'm sorry that I said those things to you. I was wrong. It's just a sentence, but it's so hard to say. It's hard to say it out loud. And it's hard to go back to our children if we feel like we've made mistakes in raising them, or we said things we shouldn't have said, or did things we shouldn't have done. It's hard to go back. It's hard to go to even though my kids aren't grown up, and I know a lot of you are in the situation where your kids have already grown up and you're working out a relationship with them. I just have small kids. It's hard even for me to go to Mia and say, I'm sorry that I yelled at you. I shouldn't have done that. I should have worked it out a different way. But, I mean, that sounds good. But you know in the back of your mind, you're like, but you were also yelling at me. I had no other option because you were being crazy and hitting your brothers. And, like, we have all these, we want to say, I'm sorry. But then right behind that, we've got all this, but you deserve it. Okay, everybody's laughing. Everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about here. I really believe that's where the heart of restoration is at. It's in that moment where we want to be right and we want to tell the other person what they should be doing, and we have all of our reasons why, and God is my witness. I'm right. It's in that moment where we have to let go of meanness and myself and my pride and who I look like in front of you and in front of everybody else, and find God's perspective. I was thinking about this, and I think God is in the exact same situation. You think about, you could point out any story in history and it would be the exact same, but you could go back to the beginning, to Adam and Eve, right? When Adam and Eve couldn't take God's perspective, focused on what they wanted or their own selfishness or their own fears, and fell away from God, I'm sure for God he also felt like a failure, or this shouldn't have happened. I think also that God would have liked to have swept it under the rug and disappeared into history, and let's not deal with that anymore. Let's create a new environment. I'm sure that God also wanted to feel like, no, I did a good job. This is the way I want it to be. But he even God, I feel like, had to let go of his pride of being God and say, nope, this is where we're at. This is reality. This is my son and daughter, and this is what happened. So, even though I want to be going forward, even though I want to see this ideal that I created with my intention, I'm going to have to step back, and we're going to have to start here with what we've got. And then so he started working through Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau, all these stories of the Bible we know. So, how are we any different? Yeah? I think it's just our pride getting in the way, that we don't like to go back and redo things, rework things. I do want to share one pitfall that I don't want you to fall into. So I don't want anybody to go away from here today and be like, okay, husband, today is the day. We're going to talk about all of this stuff. Are you ready? No. Okay. So my caution here is yes, it is good to address issues. It is not good to make them your focus. Okay. All right. There's one thing from my experience with landmark seminars that I really got, and this phrase is, what you focus on expands. So I don't want you to all go home and start talking about all your problems and making that your life. And because if you talk about your problems and focus on your problems, if you just focus on your problems, you're going to have big problems. Okay. No, focus on where you want to go. So we want to have ideal families. I discovered a few years ago what I really felt is the goal of my life and goal of our family. I want to have a truly loving family where love is just like abundant, and it's between me and Mike, and it's between us and our kids, and hopefully between my kids, and that love is just spilling out, and it envelops other people and brings them in, and it's just like that's what inspires me. That's my goal. And so we should focus on what we want. I think we could mix up this goal with like have to be there, always move forward. No, we don't lose sight of our goal, but sometimes in order to get there, then we have to address issues. So our focus is on the goal, and the purpose of having a difficult conversation or bringing up something that's bothering us is not to accuse the other person or to blow it out of proportion, but it's so that we can build a strong foundation for our relationships and our lives and our families so that we can get to our goal. Does that make sense? I don't want anybody's husband coming to me next week and be like, we argued all week long because you said that she could. Okay. I like this example from the marriage course where you say many times when we're arguing, it's like you're standing over there, I'm standing here, and we're arguing about this issue in the middle, and it's just like back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. However, let's put the argument over here, and you come stand next to me, and together we'll figure out how to work this out. You know, it's not something that's personal to you or that it's distancing me from you. Let's come together and let's work out this thing so we can be our best selves. Yeah, it's great. Where am I at? Okay. I'm almost done. Okay. Okay, this is a really great quote. This is from Psalms 37:23-26. The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. I was young and now I am old, yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread. They are always generous and lend freely. Their children will be a blessing. So this is what I want to talk about. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. So we're all going to make mistakes. I'm just going to say that out loud. We may not like to admit it. We probably have all made some mistakes, and even though we feel like we know better, we're still going to make some mistakes. So we're going to stumble sometimes. Sometimes Mike still says something that bothers me, and I know that I do things that bother him too. It's going to keep happening. But I don't believe that we're going to fall. I don't think we're going to get to a place where it's beyond repair, because we've already learned the tools. We already know our goal. We have God in our relationship. We have a greater purpose for our relationship, and that is at the forefront. So the Lord makes firm the steps of one who delights in him. So I really believe that if we have if we know the instructions, we follow the instructions, and we continually look for not just how I can have what I want in this relationship, but how we can create what God wants in our relationship. I'm thinking not only about God at the center, but also I'm thinking about what are my husband's needs? What are my children's needs? What can our family do for the families around us? These are the people who delight in God. And though we may stumble, we won't fall. We can stand strong. So I mostly talked about marriage and relationships today, but I also, when Pastor Mike was giving his message last week, another experience came to my mind, and I just want to share that briefly as it may apply for some of you. I was remembering my experience back when I was on my mission program of having to unpack my faith as well and my own relationship with God. Some of you guys have been in this church or been part of this faith for 40 plus years. Some of you, this might be your first year and you're just starting out. I want to encourage you that if you are coming up against some walls, or if there's something when you are praying and you feel a block, or if you're hearing some words or reading some scriptures and you feel, I don't know about that, it's okay. Already I feel somebody like, nope, it's not okay. Nope, I have to go forward, be more faithful. Oh, it's okay to unpack our faith a little bit too. I remember when I was in my missions program and I was being faced with a decision that was really challenging for me to make, and I was thinking about my future and what I wanted it to look like, and I didn't know if I actually really wanted to live my life for God or not. It sounds good, but when it came down to it, I don't know. And I had to unpack my faith, and I had to say, well, is that, this part of my faith, is that something that I can really own? Is that something that I can really say with 100% conviction, yes, I believe in that? Okay, maybe not right now. We're going to set this aside, okay? And I'm going to look at this thing and look at this thing. And then through that process, I found what I really did believe in. I really found God in a whole new way that I would not have found if I hadn't been vulnerable and asked my questions and really dug deep. And then when I found what I really could get behind and what I really believed in, then I can start adding back in. I can say, okay, this fits with that. I can get behind that. I can own that. I can practice that confidently in my life and believe that that will have good results in my life and be good for my family and be good for God. It's okay to go backwards sometimes. And I know some of you think, I don't want my kids to do that because then they might throw the baby out with the bathwater. No. If we don't find what we really can own in our life, then it doesn't matter how far we go. We're going to run out of steam. We're going to run out of energy because we have to come to a place where we really own and believe what we believe. It's okay. I'm telling you guys, I'm giving you my benediction. It's okay to unpack a little bit. So this goes for our relationships. It goes for our faith. It goes for any kind of relationship that we have in our life. Don't do it resentfully. Don't do it angrily. Same thing in our relationships. Don't do it resentfully and angrily in your faith. And also don't unpack things angrily and resentfully with your spouse or with your friends. Right? Do it with love and do it with kindness. Apply the same kind of grace and vulnerability to the other party as you would to yourself. I'm really excited to see what comes out of this. I want to hear some good success stories, everybody, okay? All right. That's my message for today. And I can't say enough how much just that one experience of, it's the one thing, I forgive you for hurting my feelings. But then not just saying it, but actually forgiving him, okay? And then living differently because of that. I can't say what a difference it has made in the last couple years in our marriage. And so I want to encourage you, if you haven't had this type of experience, if you've had this type of experience, you know what it does in your life. And if you haven't, it's okay, but I want you to try it and have confidence that they're not empty words, or it's not an empty action, it's not an empty forgiveness, that there's a result that will come out of it. So please join me in prayer. Heavenly Parent, good morning. Thank you so much for another beautiful morning, another beautiful Sunday. Thank you for each and every person who is able to join us today. Each and every person has come from a different place in their life. God, you know our situations. You know that this world isn't perfect, and we all have our own shortcomings, our own times when we don't want to let go of our ego. We don't want to put down our pride. But I pray that you can speak into the parts of our heart that connect to you and that know we want to. We know we want to resemble you more. We know we want to manifest love more in our life. And I just pray that today can be a starting point for that in our relationships, wherever we might be stuck, wherever we might be frustrated. Let's not give up on those difficulties. Let's not sweep them under the rug. Let's not try to ignore that they're happening, but instead let's create a real relationship. Let's create a firm foundation that you can build on, and we can realize will create so much more joy and love in our life, Heavenly Parent. I offer this message, this prayer, in my name, Michael Adonia Hendrick, bless and show family. Amen, and adieu. Thank you, everybody.